Hello everyone, Eddie Smith here from Midwestern Marks, here to talk about some eco-socialism. I thought this was an interesting topic right now, not something that always gets talked about a lot, but it's really important with the climate crisis, and given the fact that our generation is going to be one of the first generations to feel the full brunt of the climate crisis. We're already seeing increased tropical storms, increased flooding, and the temperature is supposed to increase 5 to 7 degrees by the end of the century, which is far past what scientists tell us is, good for sustaining human life. So I wanted to talk about the concept of eco-socialism, because when you look at the problem of the climate crisis, there are a couple solutions you think of. One, you think maybe we just have too many people, right? There's too many people on Earth, they're using too many resources, they're polluting too much, and eventually we're going to hit our plateau of people, and then people are going to start dying off. And out of that, you have kind of crazy ideas for reducing the population, people saying we need to reduce the population, or we need to let people starve, we need to let people suffer so they die off and the Earth can survive. That's an ideology that's coming to be known as eco-fascism, right? It's an ideology based on death, which what we know fascism is, an ideology based on capitalism, where those who own capital, of course, when the climate crisis comes, if you're rich, you're going to be able to survive. You're going to be able to go either move to a safer area if you live on the coast, or, find a safe house, or you're not going to run out of supplies. But if a climate crisis gets really rough and you start seeing tropical storms in areas, it's going to be poor people who are hurt the worst. There's been a ton of research on this, climate justice, talking about how people of color are going to be hurt the worst, and poor people are going to be hurt the worst as the climate crisis continues to intensify, because rich people can handle basically whatever comes at them with their money. They could just buy a new house if their house gets flooded, whereas working people cannot. If your house gets flooded, your life is thrown into chaos, as is what happened with every working person who was in New Orleans during Katrina, which was a storm that scientists are now telling us was likely exacerbated by the climate crisis. So then what's the answer, right? What's the answer if it's not that our population's too big? Well, the answer is eco-socialism. And I would recommend everybody read Ian Angus's book, Facing the Anthropocene. I think it's one of the best and most important books of the 21st century. So essentially, geologists and climate scientists and scientists of all stripes, other than scientists who are paid off by the big fossil fuel industry, are warning us that we're heading towards an Anthropocene, which is a new geological epoch. So if you look back in time, there's a bunch of different epochs and eras, all defined by what the point evolution was at. Like the Paleocene, the Holocene, different eras based on what things were like on Earth at that time, over the 4 trillion years or whatever years old that the Earth is. So scientists are saying we're moving into a new one called the Anthropocene, and it's one where the life on Earth is starting to die out. The greenery on Earth is starting to die out. The oceans are starting to become polluted. The coral reefs are dying. Species are going extinct at a rapid rate. We're being told over the next century, over 1 million species are going to be facing extinction because human production has gotten to a point where we're completely above nature, right? Human production, human technology has gotten to a point where we can dominate nature completely, and as a result, the world is becoming more gray. Species are dying out, and we're creating what's called metabolic rifts in the Earth's natural processes. So I'll talk about that a bit later, but it's important to understand what characterizes the Anthropocene. Lots of things: pollution, global warming, overfishing, as I said before, plant life dying out, and more of the Earth is becoming gray as opposed to green. And there are tons of issues that come with that. Obviously, tropical storms is one that comes with global warming. There's obviously a depression crisis right now, which a lot of things feed into the depression that a lot of humans are feeling right now. But one of those things is it's been proven that being around greenery and being around nature and being around other life is actually good for your mental health. I'm serious. You can look this up. There have been studies done on it. And as the world becomes more gray, as we become surrounded by more and more consumerism and more artificial stuff rather than greenery in nature, it contributes to humans being more depressed. Like if you look at the projects, public housing that's essentially just gray apartments stacked on top of each other, those are areas where crime and and depression are at their peak, which obviously there are economic reasons for that. There are other reasons for that, but part of the reason is people are living in these gray zones, right? There's less and less greenery on Earth, and overfishing is becoming a huge issue, but it's not from obviously small fishermen. It's from commercial fishing, pollution of our waterways. We're running out of fresh water. So this is the Anthropocene, right? And this is where we're headed towards. And like I said, one response to that is ecofascism, and the other response is ecosocialism. So capitalism and the market sector has little to no way of stopping the Anthropocene from coming and from getting worse. So right now, capitalist ideologues are looking to like Elon Musk, right, to save us from the climate crisis. Some people have already given up on Earth, and they're like, oh, hopefully Elon will take us to Mars and we can recolonize Mars, which is crazy that people are thinking of abandoning our perfectly good planet and going to a new planet and just letting our perfectly good planet burn. But also, Elon Musk, all he does is make smart cars, battery cars, right? And if you plug battery cars into the power grid runs on coal or on fossil fuels, you know? And Elon Musk just sponsored a coup in Bolivia so he can have more lithium. Do you think the right-wing fascist government that Elon Musk sponsored in Bolivia really cares about the climate crisis? No, they do not. And so we're looking to green billionaires, billionaires to just, out of the goodness of their heart, move us towards green energy. And they might start moving towards green energy because it's profitable, but that's not going to it's not going to be nearly enough to stop the climate crisis, because you need to take away from what the money and the power that the fossil fuel industry has and the natural gas industry has. And also, it just isn't enough, right? Elon Musk making a Minecraft space car that runs on batteries isn't going to be enough to save us from the climate crisis. The only option we have is eco-socialism, because our market system is based on competition to see which capitalist can create the most profit. Okay? And 85 plus, 85 is a conservative estimate, percent of the economy is based on fossil fuels, right? Is powered by fossil fuels. Think about any industry, Walmart, or like grocery stores, construction industry. They all use tons and tons of gas, fossil fuels, right? I mean, Walmart meaning like the trucks that take the goods back and forth, that puts gas in the air. You can imagine how in basically every industry you need fossil fuels, because fossil fuels are extremely powerful, one, and two, they're extremely easy to store. So if you have individual capitalists who are in a competition with one another, if capitalist A is using fossil fuels, or if, say they're both using fossil fuels, and one of them tries to wean off fossil fuels and go towards sustainable energy just out of the goodness of their own heart, they're going to start losing competition to the other capitalist, because the other capitalist is still using fossil fuels, which are extremely powerful and extremely easy to store. So there's no incentive to stop using fossil fuels, right? Because you need to compete with your neighbor, which is something that's called the tragedy of the commons, right? We can't take care of this common area called the earth because every individual is in a competition with each other, and as a result, they're destroying the earth in order to maximize their own profit. So the way to change this is to plan production, right? Is to rather than have the market system determine production and distribution of resources, you have a rational system of production and distribution of resources that's created by scientists and engineers and those who understand what we need to do the best in order to change the path we're on, which is sending us towards climate crisis and the Anthropocene. Right, so let's talk about this concept of metabolic rift that I brought up earlier. Human production has reached the point where we're starting to create rifts in the Earth's natural processes. So there are all these natural processes on Earth that recycle essential elements over and over and over again. Like plants intake CO2 and put out nitrogen, I believe. And then with animals, maybe it's the opposite. I think they intake nitrogen. I don't know. Obviously, I'm not a scientist, and I wish I had a scientist on here to talk about this with me. That's why I recommended the book Facing the Anthropocene, so you guys can read it from an actual Marxist ecologist, from a real scientist. But essentially, they're all the Earth's natural processes, right? Essential elements are being recycled over and over and over again, and this has happened since the Earth's conception. You know, without plants, the Earth would have ran out of CO2, or one of the elements that is needed to support human life. If we didn't have plants, we would have run out with it, or we would have run out of that element trillions and trillions of years ago. But because of photosynthesis, and the plant's natural processes which keep them alive, that also regulates the amount of essential elements that are on Earth, in the air, in nature. And human production is now getting to the point where we're creating rifts in these natural processes. Perfect example is how much CO2 we're putting into the air. So now, rather than the CO2 regulating itself in a way that sustains life like it has for trillions of years, human production has gotten to the point where just pumping CO2 into the air constantly every day, and it's creating a rift in that natural process, and it's putting too much CO2 in the air, and as a result, it's warming the Earth. So how do you stop that? You plan production. You nationalize the energy sector, right? So you say, all right, instead of the Koch brothers running our energy, instead of these giant capitalist oligarchs who have more than likely inherited millions and millions of dollars in assets and fossil fuel money, and whose companies have likely spent millions and millions of dollars lying to say that climate change isn't real in order to maximize profits, and have also spent millions and millions of dollars lobbying the government to make sure that climate policy never changes, we're going to take their businesses from them. Sorry, you guys had your chance. You destroyed the Earth. Now your companies are getting nationalized, and we're putting our energy sector on a planned route. And what that planned route is going to be is to move from fossil fuels, natural gas, and coal to renewable energy. Quickly enough so that we can save the planet, but slowly enough so that people don't lose their jobs, right? You have all these people calling right now, ban fracking, ban fracking. Well, in Pennsylvania, so many people's jobs are reliant on the fracking industry, and in a lot of the Midwest, right? And that's not just those who work directly with fracking, pulling oil out of rocks, or however it works. That's people who work on the railroad that takes the oil and stuff back and forth. There's a million different jobs that are tied to that. So you don't want to take people's jobs. You want to give them a plan for saving the planet while also saving their job. And the people in the fossil fuel industry don't even get paid well. You know, it's very, very exploitative. You know, a lot of them work insane hours for very cheap. So you can say we're going to nationalize these industries, and we're also going to allow every worker in that industry to unionize. So they're getting better paid. And then as we slowly start to build up our renewable energy, we can wean off fossil fuels, and we can move people who are working in the fossil fuel industry into the renewable energy sector. So that's just one example of how planned production can save us from this metabolic rift that the market system and that capitalism essentially has no way of stopping, right? You can only do this through planned production because scientists and engineers and people a lot smarter than me can understand how Earth's natural processes work, and if they're given a say in the production process, they can design the production process so that it's not creating metabolic rifts in the Earth, so that we still have production, we still have, everybody's got jobs, and we've still got, you know, the things that we love. We're still producing goods and services, I guess, commodities. We're still producing anything, you know, taking from the Earth, putting labor into something, and then coming out with a commodity. But it's in a way that's harmonious, right? So in a way that's not going to destroy the planet. You could also do this with housing. So think about nationalizing housing. You know, a lot of houses emit a lot of CO2, and they haven't been built in a way that saves heat. You know, they kind of are, they're not as efficient as they could be. And also you have tons of money being put into luxury homes, while poor and working class people are mostly in really old homes that, like I said, aren't as efficient as they could be environmentally. But if you were to nationalize housing, you could create eco-sustainable neighborhoods, which one, if you guys, I do a presentation talking about eco neighborhoods. If you guys look at these, they just look better to live in, right? They've done this a couple times where they've turned affordable housing into places that, one, have lots of plants. Like I was talking about, plants are good for your mental health. Tons of what are called third places, which means like community gardens and parks. And there's, they put huge parking lots filled with bikes, and there's sidewalks connecting every place in the neighborhood, so it encourages people to bike rather than taking their cars. These are the kind of neighborhoods we could start to build for ourselves, rather than having extremely wealthy capitalists build luxury houses to sell to rich people to make an insane profit. We could nationalize the housing sector and have eco-sustainable neighborhoods that are, 1, affordable, 2, good for the environment, and 3, better for people's mental health, right? Making people less separated, less isolated, bringing people together, and also that aspect of bringing more plant life in, which, like I said, has been proven to be good for your mental health. I just like bringing that up because I think it's crazy that humans are supposed to be around nature, right? And it's proven to be better for us, and that's the opposite direction that our society is going. We're going towards being more gray, towards being in this Anthropocene, you know. And I do think consumerism and our current state, the current state of our society and the impending climate crisis has a lot to do with the depression that people are feeling right now. So I just like to bring that up. So yeah, there's a little intro to Ecosocialism, the concept of Metabolic Rift. I'll definitely do some more on this later. I have some people who are actual ecologists and climate scientists who have told me they'd love to talk about eco-socialism, so I can share the political expertise, and then they can jump in and explain how Earth's natural processes work a lot better than me just saying plants make circle, make Earth good. so look forward to that soon. I hope this was enlightening for some people. Check out Ian Angus's Facing the Anthropocene. There's also a lecture by Ian Angus on YouTube called The Discovery and Rediscovery of Metabolic Rift, which is what we've been talking about today, but he has an hour-long lecture going much more in depth. So, thank you for watching, everyone. Eco-socialism, not eco-fascism. Love y'all. Excuse me. Peace.